I'm your host, Ricky Camilleri. Have you ever wondered just who is on the other end of those Nigerian Prince emails? Well, the new film, Nigerian Prince, has imagined just that. The debut film from director Faraday Okoro gives us a glimpse of a country we rarely get to see on screen and a group of con men that are hard not to care about. Let's take a look.
Before passing, my husband left me with 10 million US dollars. I have decided to donate the money to a kind-hearted individual. God bless. Mrs. Ageliki Papa Michael.
What am I doing here?
You're there to learn who you are and where you're from.
I'm not Nigerian. I'm American. I want to go home.
Where are you going?
To upgrade my return flight.
Your mother consulted the day you arrived.
Mom, you lied to me. Can I please come home?
My mother does not usually have guests. My name is Pius.
So what do you do for a living?
I think you know what I do.
Are we good?
Yes. Print your name, sign a date. It's yours. Drive!
You're a Nigerian scammer.
You can just say scammer. Scamming is a game. People are fools. Anyone can fall for scams. I am speechless. Anyone. I owe someone.
I give you a second chance. 4 million in 5 days.
You need money. I can help you scam. All I want to return is a plane ticket home. How much do you need?
This thing you're doing, you will not succeed.
The boy is American, correct? Are you trying to scam him?
Should I be worried?
Trust me.
You should stop while you still have your head. He will kill you whether you find the money or not.
Suspect is heading downstairs.
Hey! What's going on?
It is not safe. If you want to go back home, it is now or never.
Everybody put your hands together. From Nigerian Prince, producer Oscar Hernandez, star Chinaza Uche, and director Faraday Okoro. Hey, guys.
Hey.
Hey, thanks so much for being here. Congratulations on this film. I loved it. Incredible work on all your parts. Faraday, you wrote, you directed the movie. It seems like such an obvious idea in a way to tell the story of this seemingly fake story that we hear about all the time, yet no one has really done it yet. When did it click for you? When did it come into mind that, like, of course, people would want to know this is a way in to tell a story like this?
Yeah, so when I was in college, I was a college senior, and at the time I was working in a computer lab, and immediately, that idea hit me. My family is Nigerian, and I thought, what a great sort of world to set a film in. And I thought I could do it justice considering, I knew a little bit more than I would say the average person. So that's where the idea came from.
And how many years later was it that you actually started shooting this?
So the idea probably came to me in 2011, and we shot last year, so.
About 5 years.
Yes.
5 years,
Exactly.
6 years. And had you started writing it then, or did you not start writing it until a few years ago?
I started to write it, I would say, 3 years ago. There was a little time where it was in the back of my mind, but I thought it may be too big for me to tell right now. But, after actually attending film school here at NYU, I realized, nobody said filmmaking's supposed to be easy, that, if you have a story to tell, just go out there and tell it.
Right, this is your first feature, right? And you you shot in Nigeria, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so Oscar, what was that like bringing a first-time feature director out to Nigeria? And Faraday, what was that like for you shooting out there as well?
Well, I'd say Faraday brought me to Nigeria. It was a challenge. I think every film has its own challenges. Part of it was just figuring out a way to communicate effectively across the ocean. And also the culture of filmmaking in the US and Nigeria is different. So we mixed the team. So we had I'd say even more than half the crew was Nigerian, and some of the crew obviously was American. So yeah, I think we had good synergy, and the American crew and the Nigerian crew ended up loving each other, and it was a great way to, I think, make a movie in a different country. as opposed to having brought in all of our crew from another country and then just trying to sort of make it work on your terms. And Faraday's an extremely prepared director, and I think that was super helpful for just in general, but especially when you're prepping a film from another country in a country that doesn't necessarily have all the resources that you take for granted here, like electricity 24/7 or internet or reliable cell phone service or running water even, you know. So yeah, it was challenging, but it was a really good experience, I think, for everyone.
Faraday, what was it like for you? Nerve-wracking, like any filmmaking process?
There was an extra, added pressure of it being your first film or my first film, and on top of that being AT&T's, first $1 million, winner to make the film. But all in all, I mean, since I, conceived the story, I've been just, as Oscar said, I mean, just preparing to make it. So by the time we started shooting, I kind of got rid of all those fears and just embraced it.
That said, I imagine, they say with anything, and especially with filmmaking, make God laugh by making a plan. And I imagine that with something like this, that can be even more so the case because of lack of electricity, lack of running water at times, no internet. So did you ever find that your plan got in the way a little bit of being able to be flexible and compromise when you were working in these conditions?
No, because that, those hurdles were part of the plan. So, my director of photography, we had sort of contingencies in place to deal with whatever came about. And it, I think this guy as well, like, he was able to roll with the punches and, just meet whatever we had head on was the plan.
I imagine that also comes from being in character a little bit, because your character is the kind of guy that rolls with the punches, thinks on his feet, and is constantly trying to sort of scam or con or make a plan in or out of a situation. Can you talk about making this guy who is essentially a con artist and a criminal, making him likable and making someone that eventually we feel the most for in this movie?
Well, I'm glad to hear that, first of all. I think that was just always on the table. I feel like Faraday's thing was like, this is someone that we all think that we know, and let's like take a moment to look at them as a full human being. But I also think like, I had to spend a week there in Lagos before we started shooting, and I had a couple wild nights with some cousins, and just the moment we were thinking about this character as a human being, I feel like everything you said just starts to happen. As long as you're not thinking about it as a one-dimensional character, it really can't be. Do you know what I mean? And the script, of course, gave me so many opportunities to be like, there is depth to this person. He's not just a bunch of words on an email page.
Well, as soon as you put somebody kind of at the end of their tether and you give them those stakes, almost no matter who they were before that moment, they become immediately relatable.
Yeah.
And the audience becomes on their side, because you want to see that underdog make it, overcome whatever the obstacle is.
That's a universal. There's people I know in my family here who I'm like, they're in their own version of a bind, and I can feel for them the same way I hopefully feel for this guy.
When did you find, when you were constructing the story about a Nigerian scam artist, that you were going to sort of start uncovering the different layers of politics, as well as how crime is dealt with and corruption is dealt with in Nigeria?
That was, my intention from the beginning. I think there's no...
The intention to be like, a fun movie about a Nigerian email scam.
Not at all. You can't separate the two. I think, in order to tell the story, it was, inevitable to also include these other parts. And I think, being Nigerian as well, Nigerian-American, it's something that I wanted to address, and I think likewise for Chinaza as well. We didn't want to, make light of it or exploit it. We wanted to, tell a story, one that's entertaining and also insightful.
It's so smart that you have the juxtaposition of an American character in there as well, who in some respects is almost worse than the scammer for his lack of interest and lack of engagement with with the culture. And it adds this juxtaposition that makes Chinaza's character even more likable in a way because he's so embedded in this culture. When did you find that you may have needed that gateway character or needed this other character to represent the other side of this?
So a little bit of backstory.
You went there and you're like, I don't care about this shit.
It's pieces of me. My parents sent me to Nigeria to live for 2 years, and I would say I hated a lot of it at the time.
How old were you?
I was a high school freshman and sophomore. So you can imagine, I wanted to do a lot of things in high school or at least high school here, that
I just discovered girls. What are you doing sending me over here for?
Exactly.
Whatever.
And on top of that, the first year, I stayed in an all-boys sort of Catholic boarding school. So it was like this extra level of, just angst and not wanting to be there. So that was part of the reason why I think when I conceived the film in 2011 that it kind of sat for a little bit. I was sort of wondering, how do I tell this story, because it does feature, a character that this guy plays, a scammer who, he's not speaking to the audience. If he's speaking to another Nigerian, they're like on another level. So I needed a way to introduce a lot of things about the country. And once I realized like I could include bits of my own experiences, that's where the character of Eze came about, and it opened a lot of possibilities for the story.
Yeah, but at the same time, as much as you introduce this character that becomes a gateway for the country, you also introduce someone who ends up, in some ways, painting everybody else in a different light, sort of outside of just what they're doing, because of how he is interacting with them and what he assumes about them. Does that make sense?
I think it comes with the territory. You have this kid who does not want to be there, and over time, he experiences a lot. And I think he's sort of like this perfect avatar for Western audiences. They have specific, notions about Africa or Nigeria, and he harbors them for a while until, the film continues and until he has this interaction with Pius, his cousin. It was, the perfect, again, avatar to set up the whole plot.
Were you worried at all after you made this? The unfortunate president has said a comment about African countries specifically, and I think he said it about, maybe he included Haiti in that as well when he referred to them as shithole countries. The shitbag he is did that. But when you end up putting a movie out, and I don't think your film paints Nigeria poorly in any way, but it is about criminals in Nigeria. Do you worry at all about representation, or did you end up thinking twice or having any hesitation?
That incident made it tougher, yeah. And I think every step of the way, all of I would say everyone on the film, we were mindful of that. But ultimately, we wanted to do several things in this film. One is to shed light on, this culture. It has both, in terms of, scamming, negative aspects to it, but there's a whole lot of positivity in it. And I thought that, this is what a lot of films are meant to do. You see The Godfather, yes, there's this criminal aspect to it, but you also see, positive stuff in it. There's a lot about character. There's a lot about individuality.
We just didn't have a president in 1971 denigrating an entire ethnicity of people, whereas now, this is a fully three-dimensional film about human beings with depth and substance, and it's unfortunate that everything has to come in the wake of this, geriatric rotting brain just spewing nonsense about everything out there in the world. Sorry.
I like you.
Oh, thanks. They haven't fired me yet, so I just keep going. You guys have Spike Lee on the film as an executive producer. The god Spike Lee. What was it like? How did you get him involved?
So during my third year at NYU, he teaches a course there. And, in the back of my mind, I thought at the time, it would just be a perfect scenario. Like, I wanted to work on this film, and, you know, in a perfect world, I'd love to have him as an executive producer. So after that semester ended, I started working on the script, and, you know, I was just in his office, you know, every day, essentially. But I thought...
Like, waiting for your moment?
No, I did that very early on, but in my case, you know, I was like, he has office hours and I'm a student, so hell, you know, I'm going to take advantage of it.
He's an intimidating guy.
He is. I mean, I may be mellow, but, you know, I'm very persistent. And I think he saw that in regards to the project. He knew there was a story I wanted to tell, and at the time, it was a $250K budget. So, you know, like, I knew I could make it. And he saw that determination, and I think that's what won him over ultimately. Yeah, and on top of that, you know, the entertaining aspects of the film and his, you know, pro-Black agenda as well is represented in it as well.
Let's get some questions from our audience. Who has a question? Right here. Hi.
Hi, thank you guys so much for being here. I'm super excited to watch the movie. My question's for Faraday. I was just wondering what films or directors you look to during writing or during production to inspire you.
Yeah, I mean, quite a few, but my DP and I, you know, I would say we watch movies like, say, Philadelphia or Animal Kingdom, or a lot of Cary Fukunaga films, or Half Nelson, or yeah. I always get. I have a short called Full Nelson, so sometimes but yeah, Half Nelson as well.
It's a great example of what you can do on a really limited budget. Like, wasn't that movie made for $500,000 or something like that?
Yeah, I believe it was like 800, 700. So comparable a little bit to ours.
For you Marvel fans out there, it's the directors of the new Marvel movie with Brie Larson that's coming out. They've jumped from that $500,000 budget to, you know, $180 million or whatever it is now.
I can't wait to see it. But yeah, we took bits and pieces from a few filmmakers to, you know, include it in the film. So, for instance, you know, backstage we were talking about long tracking dolly shot, for instance. So we knew we wanted to, you know, like, spice up that scene a little more, and we watched this film called Hannah, and in it there's a number of long tracking shots, so we included it.
Joe Wright, right? Isn't that Hannah? Yeah.
Yes, Joe Wright.
Next, I think we have time for one more. Hey there.
Hi. I was just wondering if there was a certain aspect of your character's personality that you either related to or found difficult to get into.
That's a really good question. Stuff that I related to was just like the musicality. There's like a natural Nigerian musicality that every Nigerian has some uncle who's like loud at the wrong times and always like sing-songing. That I just knew that sound. But he's a much louder person than me in general. But the costume design, everything was so helpful to get into that. And also it's just like so hot in Lagos, and there's just, the streets just have a different energy that it just kind of like helps you get loose and get out of your head. We had people like walking on and off our sets, extras, so I just feel like I had to get out of my head a little bit and not judge myself, and luckily Lagos helped me.
Because you're sort of performing in front of people who are not a part of the set. Who are
really like, and also they're like Nigerian in Nigeria, and you're trying to like represent them as quickly as possible.
Would you keep your accent on when you went over and said hi or anything?
Sometimes, but sometimes I wouldn't, because it was actually kind of exhausting. Like, I wonder about those people who are method all day. I'm like, to put your mind in that space is exhausting, and maybe the next time I get a shot, I'll do that. But for me, I was like, Pius, then take a break, then Pius, then take a break.
Well, guys, I love the film. Congratulations on it. Incredible work. How can people see Nigerian Prince?
Currently, it's on DirecTV as well as other streaming platforms. Google Nigerian Prince film, it'll come up.
Everybody give them a big round of applause and check out Nigerian Prince. Thank you.